vineyard surrounding the chateau was the classroom where I learned about wines. And my teacher was Libero. He has tended the fields since my father's time. I can still remember every little detail in the lessons Libero taught me. Everything I needed to know about the wind, the soil, and the grapes. And Libero used to tell me on many occasions.
You see, Victor, the grapevines need care. Treat them with the same gentleness you would a woman.
Of course, he was right. Too much or too little sun will not produce grapes of good quality. They can withstand the cold, but not the frost. A late frost in May meant burning the stoves all night. It was most important to know when to harvest the grapes. Too early, and the wine isn't sweet enough. Too late, and the wine has no aroma. Libero knew everything there was to know.
The trick is having the feel for when the vines have stopped sending nutrition to the fruit. Even being half a day late results in devastation.
I get it, when the grapes turn this color, right?
Much of it depended on the weather. Sometimes hail hit the vineyard right before harvest and wiped out the crop.
Only God knows. He decides what will become of the grapes.
But every so often there was a good year, when God brought miracles to the vines around the mansion. One remains unsurpassed. It was while the war still raged on, 1944.
This is amazing. We have produced the finest wine ever, Master Victor.
We did it, Libero!
In all the years that followed, God was never again as generous to us.
Victor? I passed by and thought I heard something. I knocked, but you didn't answer me.
Excuse me, dear. I wanted a nightcap, that's all. Care to join me in a glass?
No, merci. In case you've already forgotten, we had a few too many today while attending the wine research seminar at the university. It suddenly struck me as I was getting the proposal ready for Horizon. Victor? I wanted to speak with you about Libero. It seems he's opposed to expanding the facility.
That's because some of the vines have to be pulled out to make way for the expansion, including the ones that produced the 44 vintage. The family treasure. I have a soft spot for them too. But we can't afford to discuss this issue anymore. Libero's perfectly aware of that.
And you?
Ah, no, don't worry about me. I'm the one who used up all his money to produce a better wine, and look what happened. There is and never will be a more superior wine. Any fine vintage is a mere table wine in comparison. Oui, do what you must do. I leave this chateau in your young, skillful hands.
Oh, I can't thank you enough, Victor. It's interesting you say the word young because that's the problem. There are many things that are too old or too uneconomical here.
And would one of those cost-cutting measures involve Libero?
Good night.
Monsieur, Victor, breakfast is served, sir.
Oh, this won't take too long. I'll be there as soon as I'm done, Libero. And what about Marguerite?
Madame has already finished her breakfast. She's left the table and returned to her room.
I see. Libero, you may not be particularly fond of anything Marguerite does. However, that doesn't mean she's in the wrong.
I most certainly agree with you.
Listen, the world is constantly changing. One has to change accordingly. Those who refuse to adapt don't survive.
So, shall I bring you your boots? I thought that you might like to make your rounds now.
I must say, you know everything.
I've known who you were since the day you were born, and even before then I knew who you'd become. Are you going ahead with clearing this land? Just take a look around. This is the land that produced the miracle wine, the Chateau Lagencher in 1944.
You're speaking of traditional winemaking, where the outcome is determined by God. That era has ended.
Madame, I've come to tell you dinner is served. The monsieur is waiting.
Is it that time already? I'll eat later.
The late Madame arrived at the dinner table before her husband, where she would wait patiently for him.
Unlike the wives of the past, I'm an independent woman. Please, keep that in mind. You talk about tradition, especially when it comes to winemaking, but your methods are outdated. In 3 years, we'll be bankrupt if we don't start modernizing. Unless you can produce another miracle wine like the 1944, but you wouldn't want to bet on it now, would you? Ugh. You and Victor have such praise for that vintage, but who can appreciate it? Only one person in a million can tell the difference. It's also painstaking work. Instead of trying to make a premium wine for so few people, we should take a more marketable approach. I want us aiming for a market that comprises 80% of consumers. Isn't that the rational thing to do under the circumstances? Won't you say something?
I can see that you're very busy and are putting in long hours, madame. If you don't get proper nutrition, your health may suffer as a result.
Nice.
Oui? Told you there's nothing better than tasting good Burgundy in Burgundy.
Yes, exactly. I know what you mean. It does feel as if the culture of this area is coursing through your entire body.
Then why don't you make a trip to the vineyards and ask to sample some of the wine there? I'm sure you'll get an even better taste of it.
Sure.
Care for another?
I'll take a bottle of Chateau La Jonchée.
D'accord. So, you're going to Chateau La Jonchée. You know they are one of the best producers of Burgundy in this region, don't you? I'd say they're on par with Romanée Conti and Chambertin.
Yes, I know.
But the very best wine they ever produced was right before the end of the war in 1944.
Oh?
It's an amazing story of how it came about. It was October 1944. All the growers thought it would be a lucky year for the grapes, but the Allied forces commenced their attack on the German troops who occupied the area. The chateau had been taken over and was used as a command post for the neighboring Germans. They say grapes must be picked at the right time. A servant among the group hiding in the chateau's basement saw that time had come.
Would you look at the color of those grapes? If we harvest them now, I know we can make fine wine.
Libero?
Your life for wine. You think that was crazy, yes? But not in the case of the chateau's son and the servant. They picked grapes while bullets and artillery flew overhead.
Master, are you all right?
The Germans withdrew a couple of days later. Then the rains came. It poured for a week straight. When the grapes get wet, you can't make good wine, which meant all the other vineyards missed their chance. So the only grapes from 44 were the ones that those two picked. 1 barrel, that's it. 500 bottles.
Everyone must have been scrambling for it.
Oui. And if that weren't enough, God played a little joke on them. You see, that was the best wine the chateau ever produced. One American millionaire agreed to pay 100,000 francs for 1 bottle.
Huh. At that price, they must have made a fortune.
Back then, yes. Being an aristocratic family, the good years were good. But I hear they've been in debt for some time now.
Ah, yes, I see.
But there's more.
Hmm?
The owner of the chateau sold off the 44 vintage, all but 1 bottle, which he decided to keep for himself.
But why do that?
Well, you know, the longer it ages, the better it gets. If you put it up for auction today, it would be worth at least 1 million. No, 10 million francs.
That's over $1 million.
But I have heard that they are going to sell the bottle to a whiskey company called Horizon to secure some funds so they can upgrade the winery. I believe Horizon will put the bottle on display at their showroom in Paris. I wonder what 10 million francs worth of vintage Burgundy would taste like, monsieur.
I wonder myself. I'd probably be so nervous I couldn't swallow. Hmm? Do you take plastic?
Welcome to Chateau La Jonchée.
Hello, my name is Keaton. I'm here on behalf of Lloyd's. The Horizon Company is planning to have the bottle insured, so they sent me.
Oh, yes, we were told.
This room is where the fermenting takes place. We use everything at first. The grape, the peel, and the seed are stored in these tanks.
It's all done using oak barrels, the old-fashioned way.
Yes, but we're switching over to stainless steel for the next vintage. Here, we let the wine mature through a secondary process called malolactic fermentation. These will be replaced with plastic tanks.
What's wrong with the original ones made out of wood?
Well, they won't allow us to meet the demand, of course. Tanks with temperature and oxygen control are better. They'll decrease the time, so the wine will mature more quickly. Viniculture that once depended on the will of God can now progress more reliably through technology.
I guess, but it also means an end to the miracle wines that happen every 100 years or so. For example, like the legendary vintage you produced here in 1944.
Well then, Mr. Keaton, I have to prepare for the signing ceremony tonight, so if you'll please excuse me. But Victor's here. He can take over now.
She's turned to technology for our winemaking. It actually stems from the love she had for her parents. They also made wine. It was a family-run business. Tending to the vineyards is hard work. Marguerite was bothered by the fact that her parents never had a break, and so to her, advanced technology was the only means to simplify winemaking methods. With it, she hoped her parents could finally take the break they deserved.
And where are her parents now?
They passed away, sweating and toiling in the fields. She wouldn't have been able to follow in her parents' footsteps had I not intervened. Because they made such good wine, the land value had appreciated, so she couldn't afford it. To her, you see, this whole plan is out of vengeance.
Is this it? Here lies the world's last remaining bottle of Le Jonché 1944.
Please pick it up for a closer look, Monsieur Keaton.
No, thanks. I really wouldn't want to drop it. Wow. It amazes me that you still have one left.
Actually, Libero and I were saving it for a special occasion, if there came a time when our backs were against the wall. But as you can see, the years have gone by. We've made it this far without having to do it.
And so the existing structure will be torn down. In the underground level, we will maintain and expand the present winery. And directly above it, we will be building an hotel to take advantage of the tourist trade. We will clear the vineyard next to the chateau, but that won't affect the harvest. To ensure the quality, we will blend wines from nearby vineyards. And that is our overall business plan for your consideration. We hope it facilitates your decision to invest.
Wish it was magnificent.
As for the signing ceremony and the wine bottle presentation, they will take place at the dinner party.
Victor,
What is it?
I would like tonight's function to be my last duty here as your servant.
Libero. This is the same vineyard that produced the unforgettable 44 wine. I think you should hear the other reason why I felt obliged to hold on to that last bottle. That wine. Libero and I both put our lives in jeopardy during production. A short time later, the situation with the war was changing. The Germans returned, having heard about the vintage. Libero and I hid in a haystack. We had the barrel of wine with us.
Come out! Don't waste your time hiding!
Without making the slightest sound, he protected both me and the wine. And all for what? So he can just watch me as I sell everything he devoted his life to?
Ladies and gentlemen, we now proudly present the rarest vintage in the world, the last bottle of Chateau La Jonché 1944. And now, from the master of the chateau, Monsieur Victor Champon, to the chief executive officer of the Horizon Company, Monsieur Jean-Michel Keaton.
Such a beautiful view. What's the expression? Champ d'Or, golden field? The name is derived from this exact moment.
Oui, all this land here belonged to my parents. Up to that tree and stone fence over there. I can still see them toiling away. I'm going to make a better wine than the 1944 was what my father used to say. That's why I loathed it. The sheer perfection of that vintage inspired them to work even harder. I simply couldn't separate the wine and the death of my parents. The old-fashioned production, the grapes of 44 and Libero. Even Victor. I hated everything connected with it. Yet if anyone is to blame, it is me. I never came out to this vineyard. Not once did I make the effort since my parents' death. Now that I'm here, it looks the same. I still can't believe this place hasn't changed since my childhood.
But they've looked after it. Victor and Libero, they've maintained the integrity of the vineyard. Exactly like your father would have done it, Marguerite.
I couldn't do anything to help out my parents.
Libero, are you leaving?
Oui. But it would be nice if we could share a glass of wine. A farewell before I leave.
Libero. This wine.
I had the feeling you might let the bottle slip from your hands, so I switched it with another vintage. I've known who you were since the day you were born, and even before then I knew who you'd become.
I'm sorry, Libero. So sorry. I wish.
You've just had the Chateau Le Jonché, the authentic vintage from 44. Someone saved the real bottle, and he wanted you to taste it. That man was Libero.
Mon Dieu, this is it. The one my father and Victor wanted to recapture. Now, Monsieur Keaton, aren't you going to at least give it a taste yourself?
Well, 10 million francs worth of wine here. I am a little nervous.
疲れ切っても声も出ないほど自分は切り裂くことはないよ。あなたはままため息こぼす僕に何も言えない日々ほとんど泣いてね火を見つめて坂道登ることに迷いなど感じない時が過ぎる限り僕らは強くなれる。
Keaton escorts a prisoner through perilous marshes, but even more dangerous are the enemies and allies along the way. What's more, Keaton runs into a gang of criminals who force him into playing a deadly game of poker. His only recourse is to bluff. The question is, will they back down or call his hand? Next time, No Way Out.